Good morning, Internet. It's Sunday morning. It's just after 8 o'clock. And my name is Ron. And this is Sunday Morning Live with Ron. And we're here in the backyard on a somewhat drizzly Sunday morning in May, which is kind of unusual for California. Other parts I grew up in upstate New York, so I know it's not unusual in other parts of the country, but usually in California, at least this part of California, by March we're kind of done with the whole rain thing. So it's kind of unusual to have this, and as a result, many of my usual spots, like out there behind me, you can see I had my chair all set up. And now that chair is all wet. And in fact, this chair is a little bit wet. I had to put a plastic bag on it to sit on it. But we'll survive. As I said, my name is Ron. This is Sunday Morning Live with Ron. We come to you at 8 o'clock every single Sunday morning. And we do a lot of things. And the three main things that we do is, one, I will introduce you to new art that is going up on my site. My site is called cleverly ronalcottphotography.com. So very easy to find. It's Alcott with an O, Olcott. So if you search for me, I'm also on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. And right now we're doing this live on Facebook and YouTube. Excuse me. I got up late, so I ate a little bit too fast, so I'm a little gassy. Sorry. Anyway, the three things that we do every Sunday morning is, one, we always introduce the new pictures for the week. Okay. This week will be a challenge because I named them all yesterday, but I didn't write down the names. So I'm going to try to remember the names as I go along, and if not, and you see them on the site with a different name, that's because I misremembered. Two, we talk a little bit about how to make your photography better, even if you're using a camera on your phone. There are things that you can do to make your photography better than it is already. And three, we're going to talk a little bit about how I do those things on my Sony a6000, which is the primary camera that I use when I'm shooting my photography nowadays. All right. So with those three things in mind, and I don't see anybody joining us, I don't see any new people coming in or questions coming in, I'm going to jump right in to showing you some new pictures. That's what I'm going to do. I'm still not good at, I've got all this marvelous technology, but I'm not good at talking about it and operating it at the same time. So, this one, I believe, is called simply Purple Flower Shrub. Okay. You're going to notice today that in celebration of spring, that everything I am showing this week is going to be coming from the realm of nature. I don't have any building pictures, and I don't have any landscape pictures. These are all nature pictures. So I believe this is Purple Flower Shrub. So I took this on a walk just right here in my neighborhood. This is between me and my little local bodega. There was a side street, and along one of the fences they had these marvelous, I believe these are lantanas, but somebody smarter than me would have to confirm that. And next So that's number one. Number two, this one is called A Poppy Among the Dragons. And in this one, but somebody here, wait, smarter than me, would have to, I need to confirm that. Come over here. I'm trying to monitor your comments if anybody actually shows up. So that's number one. Number two means I had to play the video. Okay. This one is called A Poppy Among the Dragons. A poppy among the dragons. In this one, but you can see down in the corner here, smarter than me, this is from would have to, I need to confirm that. Come over here. See, they had some California. I'm trying to monitor your comments if anybody actually shows up. So that's number one. Number two means I had to play the video. Okay. And you can see this one is called A Poppy Among the Dragons. I'm seeing dragon. That's what this long and among the dragons. In this one, that's a poppy. See down in the corner here, smarter than me, would have to, I need to confirm that. These guys come over here. See, they had some California. I'm trying to monitor your comments if anybody actually shows up. So that's number one. Number two, I had to play the video. Okay, and you can see this one is called A Poppy Among the Dragons. I'm seeing dragon. That's what it is. And among the dragons. In this one, that's a poppy. See down in the corner here, smarter than me, would have to confirm that. These guys come over here. See, they had some California. I'm trying to monitor your comments if anybody actually shows up. So that's number one. Number two, I had to play the video. Okay, and you can see this one is called A Poppy Among the Dragons. I'm dragon. That's what it is. And among the dragons. In this one, that's a poppy. See down in the corner here, smarter than me, would have to confirm that. These guys come over here. See, they had some California. I'm trying to monitor your comments if anybody actually shows up. So that's number one. Number two, I had to play the video. Okay, this one is called A Poppy Among the Dragons. I'm dragon. That's what it is. And we made the dragons. In this one, that's a poppy. Down in the corner here, smarter than me, would have to confirm that. These guys come over here. They had some California. I'm trying to monitor your comments if anybody actually shows up. So that's number one. Things. When I see things like this, okay, or you see clouds with one ray of light coming through, I call that a God light. It's kind of like God is sending a key light. That's a theater term. It's sending a spotlight right here just for us to see what's really important right here. Again, this is called a ray of hope. Makes me think about times when I got to go out and actually walk on hikes. I had an adventure yesterday. I drove out to Bodega Bay and back just to see some scenery besides my backyard. Didn't get out, didn't interact with anybody, sat in my car for 3 hours and drove my car. Now, I will admit, I like driving my car. So I enjoyed it a great deal, just driving around out in the country, drove through some redwood forests, some pine forests, some open scrubland, and down and managed to see the ocean before I turned around and came back. But this one was when I was actually out in whacking the bushes, trying to make my way up to a trail on top of the ridge, but I never did make. So, a ray of hope. This one, I completely forget what I called it. It is a calla lily. It is in my backyard, right outside the window of my office. I took this somewhere around Easter time. They've all long since wilted, and are doing other things, but this was a very, very pretty picture, and I know you won't be able to see it. Let me get my, but this came out so sharp in here. You can actually see, when you blow it up, you can see pollen inside the flower. So that was a lot of fun, getting that picture. Again, just sticking with that theme of nature and renewal, and thinking about being out in nature and good things going on. This one is called Sky Through Twigs. And again, this is right here in my backyard. I would have to figure out exactly where, or perhaps it was on one of my walks, but it was taken on a day that I was in lockdown, so I know that I didn't travel far from home. Sky through twigs, just some beautiful clouds framed by the twigs, and looking very happy up there. So, again, sky symbology is always free, open, flying. So, those are the 5 new pictures this week. Sky through clouds, sky through twigs, excuse me, calla lily, a ray of hope, a poppy among the dragons, and purple flower shrub. Again, don't be surprised if those show up with different names when they get on the website. They will be in the new images gallery. Everything that I put up goes among other places. These will all be in the nature gallery as well. But they will be in the new images gallery as the first 5 pieces that you see there. The order of them will change through the week as I highlight each piece for a Facebook post, Facebook and Instagram post. But you can see them there on my site. So we'll move back over here and talk to me for just a second. So that's the first thing. We showed you the 5 pictures for this week. They are all based on nature, and they will all be in the nature gallery and in the new images gallery sometime probably later this afternoon. Though I do have a semi-commission work. It's a request that I got to illustrate a story for Wormwood Press. Those of you who aren't familiar with Wormwood Press, go to www.media.com and look at some of the back issues. Very, very, very interesting, innovative, and creative online zine that features poetry, prose, art, photography, paired up together. Just an interesting experience. I've been lucky enough to have a couple of pictures and a couple of my short stories published in there, or memoirs, or whatever they were. I'm not sure what they were. They were just writing. It was brain dump. Anyway, check out www.media.com. They have a new issue coming out on June 1st, and I expect to have a photo in there because I have to take that photo this afternoon. Okay, so we looked at pictures. Second thing is, I promised to help you make your pictures better. All right. Now, if you've looked at any of my prior Sunday morning lives, which you can find in my blog and on my YouTube channel, and in my video list for my business page on Facebook, and some of them I've uploaded to IGTV. I will have to get caught up on that. But you'll know that we've talked about the exposure triangle, right? Okay. So up here, you've got the three pieces of exposure. Up here, we have the aperture. How big is the opening that lets in the light? Okay. Over here, we have the shutter speed. How fast does the shutter open and close? We've talked about both of those in prior episodes. It's strange doing this. Are you seasick yet? Okay. So we talked about both of those in other episodes. Today, we're going to talk about the third piece. Where is it? Over here, the third piece of the triangle, which is sensitivity. Okay, also referred to as ISO. In other words, how sensitive is the sensor that you are hitting that light with. So remember, a big aperture lets in more light. A small aperture lets in less light. Okay. A quick shutter. Okay, so we start here. Quick shutter lets in just a little bit of light. A slow shutter lets in a lot of light. The third piece that's going to make a difference in how our pictures turn out is how sensitive your sensor is to that light. Okay? And that's referred to as ISO. ISO actually stands for International Standards Organization. That's because when photography first started out, it was very much a photosensitive chemical process. And photographers, for the most part, made their own film plates by depositing chemicals onto glass plates. And it was always kind of hit or miss. And as photography developed and became more standardized, they needed a way to, and commercialized, here's the key part, they needed a way for people who commercially made film to tell a photography how sensitive that film was to light. So, International Standards Organization, which creates standards for lots of things, came up with this system of numbers where the larger the number, the more sensitive the film was to light, meaning the sooner it would react to light hitting it. Okay? And the higher the number, the more sensitive it was. Okay? Now, film in general starts at ISO 100. Back when you used to go to the store and buy film, okay, if you just say, I want some Kodachrome film, I want some Kodachrome for my camera, usually what you would get is ISO 100. And it was great for outdoor photography on bright sunny days because it's not all that sensitive. Okay, if you were going to shoot inside, okay, and I remember back in the 70s or 80s when they first started coming out with ISO 400 and occasionally ISO 800 that you didn't have to go to a photography store to get. Okay, they've always had those levels. Okay, but it wasn't until the 70s or 80s even, and I remember Kodak had a big ad campaign about the new Kodachrome that you could buy and take pictures inside without a flash. And that was an ISO 400 film, but it was a huge ad campaign. It was a breakthrough in commercially available photography at the time. Now, of course, everything now has gone totally digital. So the sensitivity is no longer dependent upon a chemical process. It is actually an electronic adjustment that's made to the actual electronic sensor of your camera. Okay, but it's still rated by those same ISOs because that's a numbering system that photographers know and use. So we're going to jump over to our exposure tool. Those of you who haven't joined us before, this is a tool that I have found online. It's at exposuretool.com. Okay? It will load up and you have to press a button to say start. Okay? Right now we're in completely manual mode. All right. And you will see that right now we have our ISO set at 100. This is sort of how things are set up as you come in to the tool. Okay. And as we increase our ISO, you'll see the picture gets brighter and brighter and brighter. Okay. Now, here, we're completely washed out. Ooh, ooh. No. There. Here. That's a completely washed out picture. Okay. You would never want to take an ISO 1600 picture in that kind of light with an aperture of 1.8 and a speed of 1 second. Okay. However, as we've talked, okay, we'll go back to our ISO 100. You see that's a fairly nicely balanced picture. But if we wanted to slow that image down so that we could see the individual fan blades like we did last week, you'll see that without changing anything else, we have gone completely black. There's not enough light hitting our sensor in 1/2000th of a second for us to see anything. Our aperture is all the way open at f1.8. That's bigger than any of my apertures go on my cameras right now. So what we have to do is we have to make our sensor more sensitive. You see 3200, we start to get a little bit. We go to, 64, some shadows. 12800, we start to see what it might be. And then when we go to 25.6 or whatever that says, I can't read that far, then we get as close as we're going to get in this dim light at a 2,000th of a second with our aperture wide open. We're going to get as good as we can get. But notice something about this picture. It is very, very what's called grainy. It has a lot of digital noise in it. Okay? Because the shutter speed is so fast, and one of the effects of this high sensitivity is it's trying to gather as much information in as little amount of time as it can. So not every single dot in the world may activate fast enough, and you get this noise. Okay, you see in the white areas how they're not really white, they look kind of speckled. Okay, that's called noise. So let's go to sort of a medium speed here. Okay, and you see that even in moderate, what would be considered on that grand scale, moderate, we've still got quite a bit of noise here at ISO 3200. Okay, some at 1600. So if you plan on blowing things up large, okay, I personally don't like to go below ISO 800, and then I actually clean up the noise in my post-processing with ISO 800. Okay, now modern interchangeable lens cameras, DSLRs and mirrorless, usually have a setting where you can tell it to automatically set the sensitivity, but not go over a certain amount, so that it doesn't kick you up to that 32,000 ISO and have you not notice. All right. But as we go here, okay, you can see at 400 we don't have a lot of noise. I'm going to slow down my shutter a little bit so we have enough light here at these higher settings. Okay, but you see in the white, okay, that's not a bad white. Okay, at 200 it pretty much goes away, and at 100, again, we'll up it. Okay, you're not seeing hardly any noise in here at all. Okay, now this is a fairly low light situation, right? Okay, so let's see what happens. Okay, if we put it on some of the automatic modes and see how it adjusts the ISO sensitivity. Okay, so here we're using what I and many experts suggest. If you have the option, you should keep your camera set on aperture priority most of the time. Okay, what that means is it allows you to change the settings on your aperture, which, as we discussed 2 weeks ago, makes this depth of field. See how these lights in the background and other pieces are starting to come into focus as we make our aperture smaller. Okay. Notice that our ISO sensitivity, when we're slow, is at 100. But as we start to take in less light, okay, you're going to see that ISO start to get more sensitive. Okay, this particular tool won't let you do over a 1 second exposure. So I've cut down enough light. It said I need to double my sensitivity. Okay, and as I go down a little more, it's going to double it again and again and again. Okay, so controlling the depth of field by making your aperture smaller means that you may need to adjust your ISO to a larger number. Now, aperture priority, as you saw, does that automatically for you. But if you're on full manual mode, you need to go to these kind of settings. Okay? So here's a tip. If you have a camera that allows you to adjust all of these, and even on your phone, you can get apps that will allow you to adjust all 3 of those pieces. One of the ways to learn how to adjust for that exposure triangle, okay, when you're doing things manually, okay, you want to go to complete manual mode, is to put it into auto mode first, okay, complete automatic mode, compose your picture, take a shot, see what settings it used, then switch over to manual mode, put those settings on your phone, and then adjust for what you wanted to change in that automatic shot. So obviously, this is not going to work with sport photography. Okay, it's not going to work watching the kids play. It needs to be something like a tree that isn't going to move anywhere, so that you can get several shots of it at several different settings. That's why you'll hear a lot of people talking about going manual, going manual, going manual. And when you take the training, the pros really recommend that you stay on one or the other of the priorities, either aperture priority or shutter priority, so that if something happens, you can pick up your camera and take a picture, and the smarts of the camera will adjust to at least get you an image that you can adjust in post-processing. Okay, so that is the idea of aperture. So let's jump over now and show you how that actually works on uh, on my A6000. Okay, so we're going to look at the aperture over here. Okay, and right now I have this in what they call program mode. All right, program mode. Here, I'll switch it out and back so you can read what it says. Okay, it'll automatically set the aperture and shutter, but we can set anything else that we want. Okay, so in other words, we're essentially on ISO in terms of the overall exposure, priority mode. And I have set the ISO manually to be 100 right now. Okay, if I go in, I always spin that the wrong way. As I change this ISO to make it more and more sensitive, okay, let's go to 400 as my next stop. Okay, you'll see we went from 1/8 of a second to 1/80th of a second. Now I've still got my aperture as wide open as it will go on this lens with the zoom that I have there, which is 5.6. Okay. Please notice Mr. Bunny has made it into another show. There he is, down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. But going to ISO 400 has caused me to go to 1/10 of the speed. We went from 1/8 to 1/80th of a second. Okay, and it'll flip back and forth as clouds come in and out. But let's see. Yep, no. Let's adjust the ISO some more. Let's go to 800. That was the next stop on our spin wheel. You see we've gotten an even faster shutter speed. Okay, and we've started shutting down the aperture. We've gone to f6.3 and 1/100th of a second. Okay, that's to shoot ISO 800. Now it is a very cloudy, dreary day here today. I'm not sure that it could compensate at ISO 800 if it was a bright, sunny day, but it would try. It would go to 2500th of a second and f11. But let's keep going. Okay. Now I've said 800 is about as low as I would go, and we'll actually take that picture to avoid getting noise. I have to hit that button, There we go. Okay. Next stop that they had was 1600. Okay. Our shutter's getting faster. Our aperture is getting smaller. We're up to f8. All right. Then 3200. f9, 200th of a second. 6400. Okay. 400th of a second, still at f9. Okay. 12.8. 800th of a second, still at f9. Okay. Okay, 25.6. Okay. I'm going to take that picture because we're going to look at those in a second, so you can see how grainy they come out at this level. Okay, but it's gone to a 1600th of a second. Okay, so you could stop a hummingbird at wings at 1600th of a second. All right, but we'd have to go to f10 and we'd have to go ISO 2560. Right, so no, there, that's where it was. I keep forgetting there's an extra button I have to, yeah, 2560 is the lowest, or is the most sensitive this particular camera will go. Okay, and as I said, that's pretty high. So let's take a look at the pictures that it actually took using those. Bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to take this guy off of his mount so that I can handle it myself. I like to use two hands to do this. One is on the tripod, adjusting the thing. Okay. So I now have, here it is. This is the Sony a6000. Yours would not have a cord running out of it. This is the piece that lets me do live. All right. Okay. So we know what ISO is. Okay. So here's that last picture that we took at 25,600 ISO. Okay. And it's a little hard to get. I'm not sure how to zoom in on here. Ooh, I'm running out of battery too. But be that as it may, you can see that if you look through here, now there's not some flat surfaces there. See, there are situations like this. This is a very busy picture. Oh, grains of grass. Okay, there's not a flat surface like there was on that fan in which to detect graininess. So sometimes it's okay. Okay, sometimes it's okay to have a little bit of graininess. Okay, to go to those higher ISOs to get the picture that you want. Okay, if I was trying to capture a bird flying through there, that's exactly what I would do. Okay, so here it is at ISO 800. Okay, at 100th of a second. So let's compare those two. Okay. See how this is a better exposed picture? And this is just a little bit, it had to make some compromises to try to get an exposure across multiple things at that higher ISO. Okay? Now, I didn't take any, I don't think. No, this is one from my virtual festival last weekend. That's actually the Conservatory of Flowers. And that's one of my matted prints that's for sale. But here we are today, okay, and those are the two pictures. So see how this one's just a little bit strange, and that's because of that high ISO. Okay, this looks much more natural than ISO 800. Okay, we're gonna go back to shooting mode here. I'll try not to shoot straight into my shooting lights. We're going to change that ISO back up to, say, 400. Okay. And I lose my zoom when I do that. Okay. Okay. I've got 30th of a second. Okay. Just the exposure to there. Okay. Try to get sort of over towards that same tree. You can see handheld here. I don't have that. Okay. And then we'll change the ISO up to 100. Okay. ISO is 100. There's that same tree. Okay. See if I can see him over here. There's Mr. Bunny at ISO 100. All right, so let's look at those. All right. So here's our ISO 100 shot of Mr. Bunny. You see 1/15th of a second. That tells you it's a dim day. That's pretty slow. That's actually not bad for handheld at 1/15th of a second. Shooting up towards the sky, it's a little bit brighter, so we were at 1/30th of a second. Okay, but you see how the color here is nice and rich. ISO gives you 100, gives you very, very nice pictures if you can take pictures at that level. But if you're inside and trying to take pictures without flash, And we'll talk about flashes later. Not today, but in other shows. Um, okay. So when you go to 400, you see it's a little bit blurry because a 60th of a second. Still, that's kind of the limits for handheld that I would go to. So a 60th of a second, 400 starts, the color starts to look a little bit weird. Okay. There's the oleander at 400. Okay. And there we are again at that 2560. But let's compare that to this. Okay. See how that looks washed out? The colors aren't very rich. Okay. That's because the camera is working too hard to compensate for that very, very fast shutter speed. Okay. Now, of course, we went the other way. Okay. Okay. So again, ISO 100, ISO 400, ISO 2560. So in general, you want to set your ISO as low as you can stand to get the most natural picture and to avoid noise, okay, creeping in. But there are situations where you cannot do that, okay? As we see here, 1/30th of a second, if I don't have a tripod or something to lean my elbows against, I stand a chance of getting camera shake in my picture, okay? So I would probably not shoot ISO 100 without a tripod in this light. I would go to 200 or 250 or maybe even 400, okay? So keep your ISO as low as you can for the shooting conditions that you're in, and then adjust your aperture and your shutter speed to get the artistic effect that you're looking for. Remember, shutter speed, fast shutter speed will stop motion, and a smaller aperture will give you a broader depth of field, front to back. Okay? So if you want that effect of something being in focus and everything behind it being out of focus, you keep your aperture open. If you want, for example, landscapes, you want everything from right in front of you off to 100 miles off in the distance that you can see that mountain, then you should set a very low aperture to get a deep depth of field. Now we've covered the 3 parts of the exposure triangle. Okay? Aperture, shutter, sensitivity, ISO. Okay? So next week we're going to start moving on to some of the elements of composition that you want to learn and know about. Okay? So you have that to look forward to. I don't know what else I'm going to demonstrate. I think I have shown you how the A6000 reacts and how I use my ISO. Now, in the interest, I know I've talked about this before, okay? But as you can see, right now I am in program mode. That big P up in the corner, top left-hand corner, tells me I'm in that program mode, where it's expecting me to adjust other things, and it will adjust aperture and shutter. But I like to use auto ISO. Okay, so right now I'm shooting here. It will go from ISO 100. Okay, and that's somewhere there. You can set it to just be set a limit. Right now it's set to 3200. Okay, you saw when we went to ISO auto at the bottom there, it says it will go from 100 to 3200. Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to change my setting to the one that I recommended for you, aperture priority. okay, which allows me to control that depth of field, okay, which is usually the limit of my artistic abilities. I think when I do this shot this afternoon, which I will make a documentary of it. I just am not sure when I will get it up on the site. But I'm sure that when I do that, okay, you can see now I pointed out here, I haven't changed my aperture, but it changed the ISO to 400. If I shoot over here in the dark, get that black screen, okay, went to ISO 1250, still a 60th of a second, okay. If I aim it straight at the light, okay, you see how it starts having to adjust the shutter, and the sensitivity goes all the way down, okay. So there we are. That is today's show. Okay. So what did we do? I showed you my new images. Purple flower shrub. Oh, can't change it there. A poppy among the dragons. A ray of hope. Canna lily. And sky through twigs. Okay? And then we talked for quite a long time about aperture, or about ISO. We showed you the auto exposure tool. We showed you how ISO on my A6000 adjusts things. Bulletins. May giveaway is Straw Hat Happiness. You can find that if you go to my site. After a couple seconds, there'll be a banner at the top, and you'll be able to enter the drawing there, or simply by entering your email in the pop-up that comes up when you first come into the site. Anybody on the newsletter is already entered into the drawing. You do not have to enter again. I am still raising funds for COVID-19 disaster relief.org. So again, there's a link on my page to that. I have added another chance to see me live because I know you are all drooling for that. On Fridays at 5:30 in the afternoon, I am doing a virtual art gallery show in my living room. So I get dressed up all nice, or at least as nice as I get, and put some real prints, not the electronic versions you're seeing, some actual prints up on the easel, and tell you a little bit more and deeper about the story behind those prints, how they came to be, how they make me feel, why I took them. So I think that's going to wrap up our show for today. I will see you all next week, right back here. Sunday morning, 8 o'clock, Sunday morning live with Ron. I will hopefully see you Friday afternoon at 5:30, and hopefully by then Instagram will be on live as well. In the meantime, be good to yourself, do good for others, and become the person that you'd like to meet. Bye-bye. I wish there was a neat way to just kill it right there, but there isn't. I just have to say my neat tagline, and then I have to do that.